It's up!
Welcome one and all to The Young Turks with me, John Iadarola, and Brett Erlich.
You know what? John and I were just gabbing like a bunch of old friends, and we looked up and the show was starting. That's exactly how well we get along, you and I, John.
Yeah, it's like there's not like an actual audience here, obviously. You have to sort of remind yourself that theoretically people are watching you.
Yep.
But anyway, we're here. It's admittedly a bit of a weird show. When was the last time we did an hour together, in person together?
The only reason I'm here, John, is because I thought it would bring you joy.
I'm feeling pretty good, actually.
Pretty good?
I mean, let's not go crazy, but okay.
I drove like an hour.
Thank you. Hey, it takes me a while to get here too. Anyway, I'm very glad to be here, and I'm even happier that you are here. Jokes aside, Adrienne Lawrence is gonna be leading the second hour, which is very exciting as well. And we do have a lot to talk about in this hour. Not only recapping the Oz Fetterman debate last night, which I know you watched and just thought was great for all parties concerned. We're gonna be talking about Proud Boys and drug price hikes, and a little bit of breaking news, which we're gonna turn to in just a second. But if you're joining us now, please hit the like button. Let people know that the stream is live. And you wanna do this thing?
Yes. I was gonna say Anna's out sick today. She'll be back soon.
Okay, yes, she is. Hopefully she'll be back soon. Hopefully she's feeling better. But with that, the news goes on, and so must we. Herschel Walker is facing an accusation that he pressured a woman to have an abortion and paid for it. Don't check the date on this video. This is live. This is another woman who is saying that now. She's being identified only as Jane Doe right now, being represented by obviously famed attorney Gloria Allred. And we have a number of different bits of audio of the woman talking about the experience that she had with Herschel Walker back in 1993. Here's the first bit.
Herschel Walker says he is against women having abortions, but he pressured me to have one.
She's doing a pretty good job of holding herself together as she begins to tell her story. But the actual experience, based on what she has to tell us, is pretty rough. Here's her describing it.
I went to a clinic in Dallas, but I simply couldn't go through with it. I left the clinic in tears. When I told Herschel what had happened, he was upset and said that he was going to go back with me to the clinic the next day for me to have the abortion. He then drove me to the clinic the following day and waited for hours in the parking lot until I came out. He then drove me to get medications and supplies as prescribed, and then drove me home. I was devastated because I felt that I had been pressured into having an abortion. After the abortion, I felt that Herschel began distancing himself from me. I fled Dallas within days after the abortion and did not go back to even visit for the next 15 years. Because I was so traumatized by what Herschel had put me through.
Now, of course, at this point, these are allegations. It's impossible for us to say exactly what happened in their relationship. But she is saying the reason she is now coming out with her story is because she saw Walker denying the first set of allegations related to an abortion. And she says, particularly, I saw him state that the woman's claims were not true because he never signed any cards using the letter H. I knew that was not true because he had often signed letters to me using H. And so she apparently knew that the woman's story was likely true in that case, but says she wants to stay anonymous, fearing reprisals. We'll talk a little bit about the anonymity, but look, there was sort of a concern floating around that considering everything else about this campaign, it seemed unlikely that the first woman would be the only woman, We can't say for sure that this woman, again, just allegations, will be the only other woman, but it is now two.
I'm at a decision point right now where I have to decide whether I'm going to take this with the seriousness it deserves, or if I'm going to joke about it, because it's so absurd. The idea that anyone in America has not caught on to the fact that Republican politicians say that they're advocating for stuff that their constituents want while living up to that example, that is a ridiculous thing to think. Herschel Walker is such a walking parody of Republican hypocrisy, where they, at this point, you thought Roy Moore was the massive extent that they would go to. But they have Herschel Walker now, who can't even hold down a day job like Roy Moore. He goes out and he doesn't put it, he has no excuse for not putting a sentence together. And not only that, but he has obviously, according to what I've seen and the conclusion I personally myself have drawn, he has driven women to go get abortions and then later turned around and said, I am going to outlaw abortions altogether. Well, I say put your money where your mouth is, walk the walk, Walker, and volunteer to go to jail, because that is what your constituents want. They see it as murder. You then, by their definition, are a murderer. You should be at the mercy of the people in your state, according to what your plan is for the future of America. And you should go to jail and potentially be put to death because you have committed murder multiple times. By your people's definition, Herschel Walker, you're a serial killer.
Yep. Well, by his people's definition, and also by the definition that he at least wants his base to believe that he holds. Remember, he doesn't believe that there should be any exceptions. Now, I know that people are throwing that around against literally every candidate, and I get it. Some of the candidates who say they support exceptions would vote in favor of bills that didn't have exceptions, but he doesn't support any exceptions. That is what he says. And there's no exception for incest, no exception for rape, obviously no exception for I'm a football player, I don't really feel like it. I think that probably wouldn't be one of the exceptions as well. And this isn't you're judging him based on what he says, what his side says. We don't believe that he necessarily did anything wrong. I mean, maybe ethically, based on what she's saying, it appears to have gone just beyond him expressing an interest in not having a child. He seems to have been very much pressuring her. That maybe goes beyond what most people would be comfortable with. But if he was just honest about all of this and would give leeway to other people that he gave to himself, then we wouldn't have any problem with this. This wouldn't be a scandal for him, and we could instead focus on the 100 other things that make him wholly unqualified for this position. But this is the life that he says, there's the life he says you should lead, and then there's the life that he has actually led, and he can talk about being bathed in the blood of Jesus Christ. I feel like it's not up to you at the end of the day whether you've redeemed yourself. I don't think that's how Christianity is supposed to work, that you just say you're good now.
It's so bad. I mean, the golden rule to make it particularly Jesus-y is treat others the way you would want to be treated. Come to our side, we do that. We got cookies. You come over, you get to be just a garden variety crappy dude where you knock a girl up, you say you love her, you say, I think for both of us, I think I'll stay with you, but we gotta get an abortion. Then you pay for her abortion and then you leave her. You get to be precisely that horrible. Under the law, you're fine. Because we know that it's not just a standard for me and a different standard for everyone else. Worse, what Herschel Walker's doing is decidedly elitist and anti-populist. He has put himself, because he can run good and is pals with Donald Trump, now he is in the inner circle of people who are allowed to do it. And what's frustrating is that, but not only that, but the people who are willing to give him a pass so that they can make other people responsible for taking the same actions that their leader that they want to vote for has taken.
Yeah, and along the way, you're totally right about being so elitist. We can't say to what extent it's honestly elitist or he's completely lying about this just because he wants to be in the inner circle. To me, it doesn't really matter which it is. I would think that if you were a devoted Christian, you'd care about the difference between those two things. I have no idea if he actually thinks that abortion is wrong now. Maybe he changed his mind after the multiple abortions he pressured women to have. I don't know, maybe he was hit in the head enough times that eventually the switch flipped for that. I don't know. But I do know he's a massive hypocrite. Even if it turned out somehow that this woman was lying, and I'm going to guess that Gloria Allred probably looked into it a little bit. They have bits of evidence, by the way. You can see, we're not gonna show you the videos for literally everything, but they have voicemails supposedly from Herschel Walker. You can see a shot of Gloria Allred playing that, and it certainly sounds like him. They have a photo of Herschel Walker in a bed in Jane Doe's hotel room, which again, by itself doesn't necessarily prove that he pressured her to have an abortion. This could have been taken from any number of different women he probably doesn't remember, but they do appear to, as with the first woman, have some documentation. That said, why don't we turn now to the response? Only seems fair. So we're gonna jump ahead actually to video 4. Whenever you're ready, let's go to that.
I'm gonna just say right now, guys, I'm done with this foolishness. I've already told people this is a lie, and I'm not gonna entertain to continue to carry a lie along. And I also want to let you know I didn't kill JFK either. And right now they sent him one out after he got crushed at that debate. And now the Democrats are doing say whatever they can to win this seat. But I want them to know they don't know Herschel Walker. They don't know that I'm from right here, Georgia, and I'm gonna win this seat.
Right there, Herschel Walker has the confidence of a man who doesn't necessarily know much, but he knows who he's trying to appeal to. And he knows how little they actually care about the things they purport to care the most about. This is now 2 women that say that he pressured them to have an abortion, which in their eyes is murder. They didn't care about the first. They didn't care about the documentation, the check and the letter and all of that. The fact that this Jane Doe is anonymous makes it very easy for them to brush away the entire thing. But I got news for you, I'll spoil the second season. Were she to reveal herself, and were she to have a video that she shot on mini DV of their whole trip to the abortion clinic, if he were to have sat in the viewing gallery for it, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't care. That's why he didn't have to really defend himself. He called it foolishness, I think he said. He didn't even pronounce the word right. He brushed it aside, it's condescending. He's gonna win, he's Herschel Walker, that's it. Why would you say more when no one who's gonna be voting for you demands it?
It's so ridiculous. Speaking of the viewing gallery, like, where are they doing that statement? Where were they shooting that? You know what they do? This is even bigger of an insult than him going up there and saying like, they're not gonna send me to jail for being a murderer. He's also doing it in front of a freeway. Where are you? You're doing it intentionally so you have background noise so that people won't be able to use that video. Where even are you? Herschel Walker for Senate is at the bottom of an embankment. It's so ridiculous. And on the other end of it, you have a reverend, a well-respected guy who already is doing the job great, Raphael Warnock. And on the other end of it, you've got Herschel Walker who's sitting there like trying to run faster than the allegations can mount.
Yep.
And I hope to God that he cannot run faster than them.
Yeah, and maybe wait out, like, will more stuff come out? We've got what, 2 weeks at this point? Is there potentially time? Maybe in the same way that his condescending dismissal of the first allegations led to the second woman coming out. I don't know, maybe there's a third woman and a fourth woman that are watching him near that embankment, looking like his car flew off the road and they decided, we'll use this. Maybe they're paying attention, I don't know. But what I do know is that it won't really matter. I say too often, I oversimplify things and say that it doesn't matter to literally anyone. The polling that came out in the wake of the allegations, it does seem to have hurt him by like literally 1.5 points maybe. But I do have to imagine that whatever influence him being shown to be an utter absolute hypocrite on the topic that is most important to these people, it's gonna be mostly encapsulated in the first one. A second one or a third one, or I don't know, maybe he's a Trump or a Bill Cosby and there's 40 hanging out there. I don't think that each one is gonna give you a point. We're just at a point in American politics where just nobody cares. Like think about the conservatives that are looking at this. Maybe they even think, yeah, he is hypocritical on this. But they also think that Raphael Warnock is a tool of Satan. I mean, yes, they've been told that directly. Marjorie Greene says it frequently. So why would they support him? They've been convinced that the Democrats are literal Satanists. So Raphael Warnock is an obvious hypocritical failed Christian, but that probably seems better than the Satanist, I guess.
I don't think any additional people care. That's how I would qualify it.
That's depressing.
This is Georgia. This is Georgia where it took Donald Trump being the worst president in many, many years. Like the baseline for a Georgia Senate race should be like 60-40. And the fact that the Democrat is slightly ahead of a Republican means that a lot of people who do care have done one of two things. A, said, I'm gonna be with the man of God, in my opinion. The guy with the Reverend in front of his name, even if he's got a D. And this is Georgia. I voted for Democrats as recently as 2001, to before the realignment ended, and finally went to the Republican way. I think that's the main one. Or they've said, I'm just going to stay home. I'm sitting this one out. Maybe. And the Alabamians did it with Roy Moore. They're just like, I'm going to sit out. This guy's too much. But I would just say the marginal effect of this kind of thing, when it's been proven that he is just not worthy of being a senator, is not as huge, especially with the second one over the first one. And the 1 point is a big thing because already Republican voters are used to looking at hypocritical leaders and saying, at least I know, and this is an art that the Democrats need to learn, is that even if you're a hypocrite on something, you're at least gonna deliver them the thing that they want from a policy perspective, which in this case is making abortion illegal.
Sure, yeah. De facto illegal for people who aren't as rich as Herschel Walker.
I forget who said it. They were like, I don't care what he said, I want the Senate. I don't know if that's
Dana Loesch.
Dana Loesch, yeah.
Yeah, she really doesn't care, which is definitely how religious values should work. You should be able to just dispense them like for short-term political gain, power gain. Jesus died for their sins. It is a martyrdom in the service of a larger agenda religion. So what's two Herschel Walker babies to them? I guess that's true. Really fast, we move on to the last video because we got to show you this. Imagine if the Republican Party of Georgia had just gone to a relatively big tire store and chosen the guy who owns it and ran him. They'd be up by like 8 points right now. They chose the most scandal-ridden person in the entire state. And it's still like that close. They could have chosen any dumb, regular Republican and walked away with this thing. What a bunch of morons. Let's focus briefly on one moron though, Lindsey Graham.
So I've seen this movie. I live 40 miles right over those hills there. I know Rabun County and I know Dillard really well. People here are not gonna tolerate it.
No.
There's gonna be a backlash in Georgia.
Yes, sir.
This is coming from LA. It's coming from an activist Democratic celebrity lawyer who went to the 2016 convention for Hillary Clinton, and people in Georgia are not this dumb.
The Republicans just choose stars. And for Lindsey Graham to say, oh, this came from LA, they thought, listen, Dr. Oz came from New Jersey. So you are importing people out of nowhere. You've got people, because they're supposed to be celebrities, now they've learned they just need TV stars and not NFL or whatever, stars from the University of Georgia or wherever he went.
Yeah, and look, that's a great point. Look, they know Dr. Oz from TV and Donald Trump from TV and Herschel Walker from TV. Tudor Dixon was a host on right-wing media.
Carrie Lake.
They're all I don't know where Carrie Lake is from.
TV host.
From
TV news host.
It's all from TV. That's all it is. And why wouldn't it be? They don't need Sarah Palin. That's a great point. Well, they don't need to know anything. They don't have to have experience. Experience, honestly, would be kind of an obstacle. Just believe whatever it is that we tell you right now you should believe. Be on the watch because it might change soon. But just believe whatever that is. Vote on the 2 or 3 things we actually care about. That's it.
Also, we're not as dumb as they think we are. It's like, listen, you're trying to convince them that you're tough, Lindsey Graham. If they're gonna believe that, they're gonna believe anything.
Yeah. You're being lied to by a guy who can't lie like convincingly, who can't put sentences together. I'm not saying the people of Georgia dumb. I'm saying that Herschel Walker thinks that they are. That's why he's not even bothering to really try to defend himself against these allegations. Okay, with that said, we're gonna take our first break of the hour. When we come back though, let's talk about the debate that happened last night in Pennsylvania. We'll be back with that in just a minute. Welcome back, one and all, the Young Turks, John Iadarola, Brett Erlich. Anna is out, needing to recover for a day, a little bit sick, and Cenk isn't normally here, so that checks out.
So enough with the Caruso mentions.
Exactly. Jesus. I am sure Cenk will talk about it when it comes back. I know, so we generally as hosts agree on a lot, but people do assume that we all talk about and agree on literally everything.
I don't live in Los Angeles, so.
Yeah. Exactly. Sometimes I find out things for the first time on Twitter too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about something that happened yesterday, not on Twitter, but on the debate stage, starting with this.
And let's also talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush two words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm gonna keep coming back up. And this campaign is all about, to me, is about fighting for everyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down.
That was John Fetterman, and we did have the first and probably only debate that we'll have in that Pennsylvania Senate race. John Fetterman versus Dr. Oz. Fetterman, of course, is still in the early stages of recovery from a stroke that he had earlier this year. Still struggling with auditory processing, still struggling to speak to some extent. We're gonna get into the substance that was discussed, and there's some pretty fascinating stuff in there. But I know you were watching live as it was happening. A lot of people are saying that this in the end was a mistake, that Fetterman shouldn't have done the debate at all. I personally hate when a race doesn't have any debates. This is a slightly different circumstance than usual, but still, it is, I guess it's brave, it's transparent to do the debate knowing that you're experiencing such troubles.
There's so many ways to come at it, but when I watched it, I could only watch it for like 30 seconds at a time and then I had to turn it off. And I also had that instinct right off the bat to say they shouldn't have done this. Mm-hmm. Usually there's millions of reasons why they shouldn't have done the debate with Fetterman, not the least of which is his stroke and recovery process from it. If you're in the lead going into the debate, usually you lose a little of that lead anyway. Debates typically tighten them. That's why people in the lead try as hard as possible to have as few debates as possible. That's just one of the rules of politics. Mm-hmm. But he wanted to show that he wasn't afraid. And the disparity between their ability to perform on camera between Fetterman and Oz, it was bigger than normal because Oz has tons of advantages because the guy's a TV host anyway.
Yeah.
And I would say that, Herschel Walker, for example, has no excuse not to put a sentence together. Mm-hmm. And I think that having a debate set up the way it is, I think they probably should have changed the format because of that. They wouldn't ask Tammy Duckworth to run the hurdles, and they shouldn't ask John Fetterman to do a debate where he has to process information and speak back in that quick a turnaround.
Yeah.
And they did it. That's like asking to find out, who's the best at painting a house by having like a relay race. It's just it's not what it's gonna take when you're in the Senate. Even the filibuster, which is like the talking thing of the Senate, doesn't have talking anymore. So I don't think that it was necessary to have a debate, the least of which I don't think it had to happen in that format, especially because just the optics of it. I mean, I could talk about debate history, but the optics of having that reverse angle where you see the hosts of the debate with the teleprompter over their shoulders, every turn was a reminder, not that one person's ideas were better than the others, but a reminder that John Fetterman had a stroke and Oz didn't. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the most powerful point you can make about it. And I think people need to go out and make that point over and over and over again. And it's other thing that Dr. Oz never had to overcome an obstacle in his damn life. He hasn't. Get his job. I mean, the guy's what, a heart surgeon, and he's a TV star. The only obstacle he ever had to overcome is relaxing his throat so he could swallow his dignity long enough to huck snake oil and kill dogs to find remedies.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a natural human distaste to murdering dogs. That could be seen as an obstacle, and he got past it. So let's give him at least credit for that. Yeah, look, having a debate where the format is give me literally 1 minute answers to things feels designed to hurt the guy who's gonna have a little bit of trouble expressing himself vocally. That seems weird, but remember, the debate rules were not up to just John Fetterman. The Oz team was involved too. The Oz team stopped the Fetterman team from having journalists in the room that would be able to see exactly how that whole system works. And that was designed, stopping that from happening was designed to make it so that Tucker Carlson could go live tonight and say that John Fetterman is a post-humanist cyborg creature or something. They're all saying that he was getting messages beamed to him and stuff. It's complete nonsense. But Oz gave an assist to that because he will always give an assist to fascist conspiracy theorists. That's the substance of the race. I apologize for focusing on that for a minute. I didn't think that his performance was quite as bad as you're saying that you literally can't watch it for more than 20 seconds. I do think that he had trouble. But I'm not gonna go into depth of it again. We talked about it in the damage report this morning, but like, it is not inconceivable that at some point a person could run for office who cannot speak. What's gonna happen when that happens? We, as an advanced society, surrounded by technology and stuff, can't figure out any other way to have a discussion about people's positions. We have to formulate it in the exact same way, focused only on speech and quick turnarounds. Hear this, talk immediately, as if that's how politics works day to day.
Right. I think the other formats they could, if I'm Fetterman, I'm proposing, why don't we have it at a barbecue? I don't want to wear a suit. I want to wear a hoodie and shorts in the fall in Pennsylvania because I'm a Pennsylvania. We could have veggie, we could have crudité, we could have anything and start the negotiations there. Because that's another thing that Fetterman doesn't fit. He does not fit he doesn't fit the mold of your typical politician. Yeah, he's a Mayor Braddock and he was, he's the lieutenant governor, fine. But this is a guy who you see him give official addresses in a hoodie because when he puts on a suit, it looks like a guy who always wears a hoodie wearing a suit. And you put Dr. Oz in a suit and he'll say, oh my God, I don't want to show off because I'm only gonna wear my $3,000 suit as opposed to my $15,000 suit. Yeah. And I'm gonna run, it's all a fake snake oil sales job when it's Dr. Oz. Yeah. And I just think that I was in Pennsylvania recently. I was in Pittsburgh and I was in an Uber. And there was a guy who drove the Uber and the dude was spouting conspiracy theories, saying that JFK was the only Democrat he would vote for, not because of any policy. Only policy he mentioned was JFK was a Catholic and he would never put up with abortion.
Sure.
But I mentioned universal health care, and he was like, now there's something I can get behind. And if you focus on the policy that he's putting forward, and you keep it populist, and you talk about the working men and women of Pennsylvania, then Fetterman has been doing that, and he should win.
Yeah.
But these debates are so stupid.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous intersection of the weird lens that class is viewed through in America, with weird ideas of authenticity, that like John Fetterman wearing a hoodie makes him disqualifying, but the billionaire Trump is a regular guy.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that's supposed to work. But anyway, I wanna make sure that we get to at least one of the main policy issues they talked about. Let's jump directly into Dr. Oz talking about abortion.
You say that you're pro-life, but you do support abortion exceptions in the cases of rape, incest, and to protect the life of the mother. Aside from those three exceptions, should abortion be banned in America? 60 seconds.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive, to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves.
Okay, so if you want local politicians being able to determine what happens to you and your body and the bodies of people around you, then Dr. Oz is probably your guy. But bear in mind, he's also a massive liar, because he said multiple times there that he doesn't want the federal government involved in these sorts of topics. And yet when pressed on whether as a senator he would vote for Lindsey Graham's 15-week federal limitation on abortion, 3 times he was asked, 3 times he refused to answer. So to be clear, he doesn't want the federal government getting involved to guarantee your rights, but to whatever extent the federal government wants to limit them, he will be a yes vote for that.
Yeah, I think the way that he answered the question about Lindsey Graham was pretty straightforward. I mean, he kept explaining it over and over again, and it sounded like he said he would vote against it. But I don't believe him. Even if you think he answered it straightforward, he's answered a lot of things straightforward. Even in what he wanted to sound like a straightforward answer, he's saying, I don't want one kind of political figure in the room with you and your doctor, I want another. And I want the one that agrees with me, period. He wants the government to tell you what you can do with your body. He is another big government a-hole who doesn't believe anything he says and has been chosen because the people who are about to take him from being a TV star to a senator/TV star will be owed something.
Yeah.
And if you live in Pennsylvania and you care at all about rights, the Constitution, humanity, then you've got to vote against Dr. Oz.
Yeah. Really fast, we can't. If you keep getting asked the same question, you keep saying, I've already answered that thoroughly, and you're being asked to say yes or no, and you won't, and you just say, I've already been very clear, and the person's saying you haven't been clear, you can't just keep saying that you've been clear. Because clearly you haven't been clear, would be my answer.
This opens up a discussion about how
the
horrible the host of that debate was.
Sure, I agree with you that I don't believe him. I will say that. With that said, let's quickly breeze through this topic. It's an interesting one. We can jump into this video whenever you're ready.
I do want to clarify something. You're saying tonight that you support fracking, that you've always supported fracking, but there is that 2018 interview that you said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand and I do support fracking.
So that is one of the policy-based responses from John Fetterman that's getting the most attention. In the past, he has said that he's against it. He's never been incredibly clear. Bear in mind that earlier this year, a lot of progressives had an issue with his past on this very topic. But it's really where his inconsistency on a topic, combined with his difficulty in expressing himself on the debate stage, certainly is not doing him any favors. And I can't see who would come out of that answer liking him more as a candidate. Like if you're opposed to fracking, you're not gonna like that. And if you want to choose a candidate based on fracking, you're probably just gonna end up going along with Dr. Oz anyway, who's gonna let fossil fuel companies do whatever they want. So that seemed to me to be, aside from the overall issue that he might have communicating, that seemed to me to be the biggest misstep policy-wise.
This is one of those moments where you look at it and say, all right, I'm gonna check with the clarification later because it sounded like his ability to speak was what got in the way. It seemed like every time he tried to go back and edit himself, he just moved on in the sentence and felt like he had already said it, but he was further along and that's just how it presented itself. And I would say that, listen, Pennsylvania and energy production have a specific relationship. He's running to be a senator representing Pennsylvania. There are many benefits geopolitically to increasing your output of natural gas, even though it is horrible for the environment and the cleanliness of water in the region. Not only, and it also makes seismic issues happen in places that don't have faults. So that's one thing, so I would wait for that. But when it comes to that and the $15 an hour minimum wage, there is nothing that Dr. Oz is going to do to help actual people in any actual way. With the abortion, with the $15 an hour minimum wage, and with the fracking policy, all he is going to do, Dr. Oz will only benefit corporations. He wants freedom for corporations and he wants chains for people. And that's the only thing you need to remember every time you think about Dr. Oz, unless you remember him saying crudité instead of like broccoli and stuff.
I could go for a nice tray of broccoli and stuff. Anyway, okay, with that, why don't we get ready for the B block, okay? We're gonna fit in one more topic. I understand we're burning through the hour, but whenever we're ready, let's go to that first video of the B block.
You got to go stronger in that one thing, because that was the one thing you a lot of complaints about. Look at Carrie. Carrie's winning with very little money. And if they say, how is your family? She says the election was rigged and stolen. You'll lose if you go soft. You're going to lose that at the base.
I'm not going soft.
I've never come in to do a rally where the person lost. Not once. I mean, it's been pretty amazing.
No, I'm just sure we're going to beat this guy.
So that was Blake Masters doing a bizarrely performative phone call with Donald Trump for a Tucker Carlson documentary where he calls up Trump and instantly Donald Trump begins castigating him over not being sufficiently supportive of the big lie. Blake Masters, a guy who on the debate stage, and that's the venue they're talking about, said that the entire 2020 election was rigged by big tech or something. Got the greeting from Donald Trump. You're going soft. You're not talking about the big lie. Carrie Lake, it's her whole personality now. Now look, Blake Masters did say that he hadn't seen any evidence that votes were actually switched, which is, and this is weird because we're talking about Blake Masters, the truth. There isn't any evidence of that, and so he's actually saying something that's connected to reality. Now, I'm not gonna give him a ton of credit, because I think that were he to become a senator, he's going to do whatever he can in his power to advantage anti-democratic politicians like Donald Trump. But let's identify that at the very least, he's saying this because he thinks it will make it easier for him to win. He is a candidate who is trying to actually win. Donald Trump would love him to win, but Donald Trump is more focused on pushing the big lie as a concept to save his ego at this point. And Blake Masters has that bizarre smile on his face throughout that talk, which is partly, you can chalk it up to the fact that Blake Masters is a very, very weird person. But you know what he's thinking about Trump in that moment. That he's getting criticized over this, when I'm sure he thinks he did a good job in the debate, and he is trailing in the election, but what a weird thing for Trump to focus on when talking to this candidate.
All I heard was that this guy goes soft, and Mark Kelly's been to space. That's all I'm saying. One guy is an astronaut who has gone to space and the other guy goes soft. Like that's the thing, is the idea that Donald Trump and the Republican Party and people like Blake Masters think that they're gonna be alpha dogs when they're running against someone who has been to space, who's a literal astronaut, who rides rockets that go thousands of miles an hour, crafts that go thousands of miles an hour. Like Blake Masters, he goes soft. I don't know what to do. It's a problem, and this is actually, in all seriousness, this is the way that they operate. They repeat the same insane message over and over and over and over and over again until you realize your only option is to refute it or completely change the conversation. And people try to change the conversation. There's a ton of people who are bad at politics who don't try to change the conversation. And then they always find themselves in the same conversation rebutting in nonsense. But you still have to tell people that the election, there's no evidence that the election was rigged. The election was not rigged. Any sane person will say that it was not rigged and that Trump lost because he is a loser.
Yes.
But Trump just makes you engage in this stupid conversation over and over again. And worse, as much as they say that like the left polices language, that's exactly what Trump's doing.
Yep.
He's policing Masters' language. He says, you can't say anything other than exactly what I said, which was the election's rigged.
Yep.
And this same dynamic plays itself out over and over again with stuff that when they first say it, like, this is insane. What do you mean critical race theory? What do you mean they're going and mutilating genitals of children in the middle of their development? That's not happening, but they repeat it so much that their idiot moron friends who have absolute litmus tests for whether you can belong in their club will cudgel you if you don't say that absolutely insane stuff is true. And I don't know where we fall and what our obligation is other than to come up with something. And we have to base it in reality. I want to base it in reality, but they've got us off in crazy town. And once you're unmoored from reality, that is precisely when fascism becomes the reality.
Yeah. And look, there's a reason Trump wants the only thing that makes you a Republican or not to be about whether you say that literally years ago he got robbed. Then it can be about anything. It has no tie to policy, nothing at all. It's all just about your view about a historic fact about the dear leader. Like if you don't believe that he's never bowled anything less than 300 back in the 80s, then you're not a good Republican. That's what they're setting up. Quick fact check though, because you brought up that he's a loser. He says at the end of that phone call, I've never done a rally for anyone who lost. I looked into it and you did do some rallies for yourself. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna boom roasted. We're gonna take our second break of the hour. When we come back though, COVID vaccine price hikes coming. We're gonna break it down after this. Welcome back, one and all, to what remains of the first hour of the Young Turks with me and him on the keyboard or whatever.
I'm so glad you didn't spill whatever that is.
Well, there's very little left in it anyway. I think that we would have been okay. Anyway, Brett, it's great to have you here. The hour has raced by.
It has.
It has. Would you like to talk about a little bit more news?
Whatever you desire.
Okay, I'm gonna be going home then. Anyway, let's talk about some news. This is actually a really important one, and you're probably not gonna hear that much about it. So let's dive into it. The COVID pandemic is very much still here. While the case counts, number of people in hospitals, number of people who've died have gone down over the past few months, it has effectively leveled off at this point and is likely to rise in the near future, which means that if you have not gotten your vaccine, if you have not gotten the most recent bivalent booster, now would be a great time to do it. Not only for your own safety, but also for your bank account, because Pfizer has announced that it's soon going to be doing a markup on the vaccine. For uninsured Americans, it's going to rise by about 10,000%. Let's give you all the information. So once the US government uses up the doses it's already bought, which we've been burning through, that's expected to happen sometime in the first few months of next year. Pfizer is gonna raise the price to as much as $130 for a single dose of the vaccine. So apparently, Angela Lukin, executive at Pfizer, said that they expect that the vaccine will be made available at no cost to people who have private insurance or government paid insurance. Lukin did not say whether the company will make any accommodations for the tens of millions of people in the US without any health insurance. I'm gonna say we could probably guess. I think, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, the cost of producing the vaccine is estimated to be as low as $1.18 per dose. The US currently pays around $30 per dose for Pfizer's shot. So they were already making a tidy profit and they're about to raise the price substantially.
Remember Martin Shkreli?
Yes.
Do you know how much he hiked the price of his?
7 times or something?
5,000%.
Oh geez.
And remember, everyone said that Martin Shkreli was the most evil person in the world for raising the price 5,000%. This raises it 10,000%. Now, by my reading of it, we covered this in Unbossed earlier this week. Everyone watch Unbossed every weekday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com and facebook.com/unbossedtyt. It seems like it's a $10,000 above cost asking price. 10,000% above yes. How much it costs. So they're making a 10,000% profit. And so we went through and we're like, imagine if other companies priced their products the way Pfizer is pricing.
I love it already.
So at the launch of the dollar menu, McDonald's was charging $1 for something that they made a 4% profit on. And so, a 6% profit on. And so that is the equivalent of when they launched the dollar menu, McDonald's had the $94 menu. Charging this much based on what it costs them is like McDonald's charging you $94 for a double cheeseburger. And when their executive shows up and that executive says, oh, you know what, won't cost you anything if you have private insurance. Yeah, but they're still getting paid for private insurance.
Yeah.
It's all a scam. Your job is paying someone that much. And because of that dynamic, it costs Americans pay twice as much per person for health care. So twice as much as every other industrialized nation that has universal state-run health care. We pay twice as much for everything per person, and we die sooner.
Yep.
And it's because, and when you hear that this system is running at a place in a way where you can raise the price by 10,000%, you think, well, something's broken.
Yeah.
But the people who built the system say, it's working exactly the way we continually pay for it to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, at the very least, it is illegal for any of our politicians to invest in Pfizer or anything.
That's
they can't
not
invest
true.
in.
No, John.
No?
You're saying things that make sense to do.
Well, it shouldn't be legal. That's crazy.
Listen,
because they determine what's gonna happen. But yeah, no, of course. Look, it's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And when you see that they're gonna be able to do this, the idea that there's gonna be any significant strike back against, gasoline companies doing some more price gouging, like they're not gonna do anything about that. The gas companies at least aren't gonna raise the price of gas by 10,000%. But there's seemingly no end. There's seemingly no limit. At the same time, by the way, the WTO has stopped the proposal to temporarily waive the patents on these vaccines, which would have helped generic versions of these vaccines be made in countries throughout the world, which, by the way, have not had nearly the access to vaccines that we have as of right now. Just 23.3% of people in low-income countries have received at least one coronavirus vaccine dose. And that's not because they unfortunately trusted Tucker Carlson and decided to go without. Many people would love to get it, but just can't right now. Pfizer is doing everything it can internationally to stop that sort of proposal from going through. Now, in the past, it has been the case sometimes where these companies will say, well, sure, we are charging way more than it costs to make these medications, but we had to develop the drugs in the first place. In this case, though, we paid for that too. I understand, not 100%, but we massively subsidized the development of these vaccines. So to then turn around after already making a massive profit and decide that we need to up it by 4 or 5 times is insult to injury.
Right, so with the other ones, we said, Operation Warp Speed, here's a bunch of money, please make it. That's so taxpayers already paid for it, okay? With Pfizer, all we did was buy a bunch ahead of time. If it works, we're gonna buy a lot from you. And so they essentially did, not the first one's free, but the first one's super duper cheap. And then when you realize that Pfizer's awesome, you wanna stay alive, don't you? Then they jack up the price by 10,000% over cost.
Yeah.
It's nuts, man.
Yeah, and bear in mind, as you said, if you have the insurance, you're still it ain't free. Look at your check.
Right.
You're paying into that.
Right, someone's paying me.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is you just won't have to deal with the paperwork is essentially what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. You won't have to take your debit card out at CVS maybe. That's the only thing it's saving you.
And then the last thing for everybody to tell all their friends about how it works in America versus other countries, can we do this? America, we're number 1 at so many things, including among developed nations, the cost of prescription medication.
Yep.
Insulin, there's an ALS medication that's $140,000 per year to have. It's ridiculous. So many things are so far above price because other countries, they allow the government to buy wholesale. The other countries say, okay, I'm Japan. You wanna sell any drugs in Japan? The government's gonna buy all the drugs for everyone. So we're Costco in this, as opposed to sending someone to a boutique store. Mm-hmm. And worse, the only part of the government that is allowed to collectively bargain, negotiate for drug prices is the VA, the veterans. And recently, we wanted a bunch of Medicare to do the same, but that got brought down to 20 medications by 2029. 20 drugs, Medicare only. That is absolutely, positively insane.
And it's especially weird because there are so many right-wing populist politicians. They must not know about this, or else they surely would have stood up for their constituents and fixed it.
Trump's the only one kind of saying it.
Yeah, he was also president for a few years, and he has absolute control over his entire party. One would think that if he really prioritized it, he could probably get them to do something about it.
And just the last little bit, when they made the collectively bargaining for Medicare illegal when they created Medicare Part B. So in 2003, they just made it illegal to collectively bargain. And they said, well, we think it's a better shot if Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Aetna, they're all going and doing the negotiations themselves. But anyone who's ever been to ballpark knows that if there's like 4 places to buy a hot dog and they all decide they're gonna jack up the prices, you got only so many people offer healthcare.
Yeah.
And they all are in it together, raising the prices on us. How do I have proof of that? It costs twice as much per person in America for healthcare, and we die sooner. That is how you win every argument about whether this competition situation works versus the government collectively bargaining on your behalf.
Good point. Well, I think that we unfortunately have run out of time, but fortunately, although Brett must go, and Brett, thank you so much, not only for joining us on the show, but also joining us here at the desk. That's a novel thing. Great to have you here, thank you. Everyone check out Happy Half Hour, which won't be happening today, I'm assuming.
It'll happen today.
You're gonna do it?
The big question is whether Burbank's gonna leave her protests to be on it today. I don't know, something about racism and not wanting to drink with me.
We will see if Kevin De Leon steps down in time for Happy Half Hour. In any event, Adrian Lawrence is gonna be joining us on the other side, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.